Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Cynthia Mohegan with the Rural Nevada Democratic Caucus, and we are here today in Ely, Nevada for stop number 4 on our Rural Road Tour. I want to thank Woody Howard for getting us set up here at the high school. We are at White Pine High School in the multi-purpose room. Also helping us today is our always amazing Devin Doan, our chair, and Marie Bledsoe, our secretary. We'll get right to it.
The gain's a little too high or too low?
Check. Okay. We'll go ahead and get right started, and we'll start. Okay, introduce the candidates. Immediately to my right is Matthew Fonkin. To his right is Gabriel Enriquez. To his right is Greg Kidd, Josh Bay, Kathy Durham, and last but not least, Mark Jolly. Today's first question is going to be about gun control. I have not paid super close attention to media because we were driving here, but just today in Louisiana, I think it's 8 children were killed in another act of mass gun violence. It is absolutely horrific. If you were elected to Congress, what steps would you take to enact gun control on a federal level?
My team, we were out knocking doors today, and when we finished up, that's when I saw the news of what happened in Louisiana. It is 10 victims and 1 male person, suspect who has been cleared. But these have been happening since my childhood. I remember the very first high school shooting, to my knowledge, in Jonesboro, Arkansas, and how horrific that was. And then seeing Columbine and so many more, and they continue to escalate and get worse and worse, and we're having more and more and more and more every single day. It's no longer every year. We have had too many thoughts and prayers from our elected officials over the last few decades of this escalating. It's going in our grocery stores, it's in our churches, it's in our movie theaters, it's in our schools. My partner, being a school teacher, he is worried. He works in a middle school. He is concerned about the day when it happens at his school. That is a concern of so many Americans all across this nation. They never know when it's going to happen to them. We need elected officials who are willing to make sure that we have red flag laws, that we are reining in the access that folks have to guns, especially with the loophole with the gun shows, that folks are able to get around the laws. We need to make sure that they're, we just need strengthening of our gun laws. We need to make sure that we have background checks and so many other things, and I'll make sure that we're working with those folks and stakeholders to make sure this is happening.
Thank you, Matthew.
I'm tired of hearing about thoughts and prayers. I am just sickened by how very often it seems that the solution is to grab a gun, and that is the panacea for so many of our societal ills. I do support the Second Amendment, however. I do not believe that we should be controlling guns. I do believe that there should be gun safety. I don't believe that there is any space in our society for weapons that are, high caliber in nature. I understand that guns for rural folks is a different perception than those who live in other spaces and other communities. This is why I am a huge supporter of smart guns. This is 2026. We need to incorporate technology that reduces accidental harm. We need to look at the root causes of a lot of these tragic events. And the data does say that a lot of it is rooted in economic inequality, which is why I am fighting for economic universal policies for all.
Thank you, Gami. Great.
Hey, there's two major loopholes in gun regulation today, and they both relate to whether guns have to go through the background checks when you buy them. And one situation you mentioned was at gun shows, but the other is private party transactions, so buying guns online. And as long as you're not a quote-unquote professional dealer, those guns are moving around without going through the background check or registration process. I believe every gun should be registered in the United States. Every transaction that happens, whether it's a private party transaction, a gun dealer, or a gun show, there should be an easy process of going through a background check, and then who owns that gun should be known. We talked about a technology called blockchain. Well, that's what blockchain is for. It's just like a title registry. Like you have a title registry for your home, like there's a title registry for cars. You can have guns registered, and so every law-abiding citizen can have access to guns. And the red flag laws. There's a fight in this state, even after this state being known for the biggest mass shooting. There are some candidates, not at this table, but on the other side who want to do away with those red flag laws. I think red flag laws are important. People that have been involved in domestic abuse, mental health issues, shouldn't have guns. And by tightening those red flag laws, plus having good registration, that's a way to get a handle on this, eliminate the loopholes. Thank you.
Thank you, Greg. Josh?
1 minute. Oh. What the hell did I just do? To 1 minute. Sorry. Please go.
I agree with what everybody said before. We absolutely need to end the red flag laws so that people who are a threat to themselves and others, their firearms can be taken away from them temporarily with due process and like Greg's idea for registration of firearms. I would like to see more limitations on who can access what we commonly call assault rifles. I'm going to call them military-style rifles. People argue over what that means, but we can come up with a good definition for them. We all know what they are. When they're used in earnest, they kill a bunch of people. I understand why people enjoy having them, but I don't think that we should be allowing easy access to them. And because of the easy access in our gun market, we have effectively armed the Central and South American drug cartels. And that has been responsible for thousands and thousands of deaths. So I would like to see a separate class for those kinds of weapons so that access to them is restricted, but if you go through a background check, if you get a psychiatric examination, if you pass a test, if you show that you have a safe place to keep it, then you can have them. Something else, when we talk about all these gun shows and sales, I support the Second Amendment, but the Second Amendment doesn't confer an unrestricted right to sell firearms. And I think that's where a lot of these problems are coming from, is it's very easy for people to get guns on these secondary markets. I think if you want to sell your gun, you should have to sell it back to a licensed dealer. We should only have licensed dealers for firearms so that we can control the market itself, make it harder for people to go through these straw purchases, which is what a lot of the Central and South American drug cartels do. So, red flag laws, better registration for guns, and making it so that only licensed dealers can sell guns. And if you want to resell them, you got to sell it back to them.
See, Josh, Kathy?
I hope you guys don't mind, but I've been wanting to do this since day one. I'm a teacher, and I hate teaching from my seat.
Oh, good.
So I want to stand up.
Go
I'm
right ahead.
comfortable that way.
Walk around with it, it's a rubber duck.
This is something that I know all too personally as a school teacher. I remember going to school and all we ever did were the fire drills, although I am old enough to remember having to do the red skirt drills under the desk as well. But being a teacher, I am all too used, and so too are my students, doing lockdown drills, shooter-in-place drills, the mock drills where they actually have people come in, and it's not something that we should be putting our kids through. It's not something that any of us should have to be going through. And then I myself was in Salt Lake at a rally and no more than 200 yards away when shooting broke out at one of the protests in Salt Lake and a young man was killed. What is the solution? Well, first of all, I support the Second Amendment, just like I do all of the 26 amendments. But the conversations need to be around, as was brought up earlier, why are our young people shooting each other? Why are our young people turning to violence? And I think that, it's really easy to go after the secondary thing, which is the gun, but that will never solve anything until we find out why people turn to violence in the first place. We need to have much more mental health care in our schools for our students. I work in a school where we've only got one counselor for both the middle school and the high school. We need to address the mental health issues. I have done this with my students, and I'm running out of time, but we need to get to the root cause. We need to close the loopholes that allow people to get access to the guns without being registered. We need to protect the Second Amendment. It exists for a reason. We need to get to the root cause.
Thanks, Kathy. Mark?
Just give me a minute. Oh, sorry.
Okay, thank you. I'm kind of affected by this. I've got a little bit of a story. So I like to go hiking with my wife, and we were probably about 2 hours back in the middle of nowhere on the mountainside. We were getting spotty signal, and it was the middle of the day on a weekday when we could do this while our kids were in school. And I got a weird message from my youngest kid who was in middle school, and it was just a bunch of hearts. I had no idea what that was. So I just had to send her a heart back. And then when we picked up signal a little bit later, we got a red alert warning from the school. My daughter's dyslexic. She has to use speech to text to send anything. Those were my daughter's last words to me, is what she's trying to do. She's just trying to express that she loved us while she was cowering in the back of the room. Sorry. This is personal to me, but even before I felt this way, even before this happened, by the way, she's fine. It was a guy who was wandering around the school grounds with a knife. Good thing they did that. But I couldn't get a message to her, and I could not get out and back to my car to get to my daughter. Right. If you cannot look at this objectively, if you do not understand that there are people dying around you and they need you to grow up, then you are not a serious person. Common sense gun laws are just that. Open your ears. Registrations are not taking your guns away. Red flag laws are not going to harm people. They're going to be saving people, even the people that they're applied to. If you want to discuss this more with me, feel free, but it's not just a personal thing for me. This was something that I felt before. Thank you.
Thanks, Mark. Okay, we're going to move on to another topic now. Thank you, Mark.
Up here, guys. Sorry.
You do not need to apologize for anything.
Okay. Fair.
So this is a two-parter. This is about committees and committee assignments. So if elected, what committees are you hoping you would be able to serve on in Congress? And a follow-up question is, President Trump loves to move fast and break things, including dismantling many federal agencies. Through your committee work in Congress, tell us how you would rebuild the affected federal agencies. And this question was submitted to us by our Secretary, Marie Bledsoe from Gardner-Mill and Battle. Thank you, Marie.
Yes, thank you for the question. So, if I were to be elected to this office, I would love to be on the Natural Resources Committee. or the agriculture committee, or the infrastructure committee. Those are the three things that I believe that I would have a stake in and have the knowledge to be able to go in and advocate for as a congressperson. Now, all of the destruction that has happened through our federal agencies, but as a congressperson serving on those committees, I would be able to use this cool tool called the Congressional Review Act. And this is where it has no oversight by the President of the United States or the executive branch, where Congress actually does control these federal agencies through their policies. And we can go in, we can audit those agencies and their policies and make sure that they are reviewed by the committee and corrected and expanded upon, and making sure that those agencies are operating under the way that the people need them to be, rather than the corporations that are putting their lobbyists in place to control those federal agencies. I also believe that we can strengthen policy inside of these agencies and put teeth on the appropriations going to the contracts. Because a lot of what's being done in our government right now is it's all being privatized outside of the government by contracting out to private consultants to do the work. And we need to make sure that those appropriations have teeth in them so that the money is going where it's supposed to. I would rather expand into federal jobs rather than continuing to go to private consultants to do the work. Yeah.
Thank you, Matthew. Comment?
I would be honored to serve on any committee having to do with economic development, foreign affairs, homeland security, and ICE and things of that nature. I have over 20 years of international relations experience, having come of age immediately after September 11th. My dream was to be a career diplomat, work for the State Department, and protect our interests at home and abroad. With regard to the destruction, Project 2025, the intent was to have many of these programs destroyed for years, if not decades, or indefinitely. We don't know how serious the damage is, and so I would look at commissioning independent, nonpartisan reviews to how serious that damage is, while at the same time giving folks immediate relief. And this is why central to my platform, who no other candidate has here, is a universal basic income of providing everyone immediate relief, $1,300 once a month, paid for by Tesla, Amazon, the mining industry. Just like Alaska has had their permanent fund, we can have a Nevada permanent fund as well. They have shown us for the last 50 years that this is possible. This is very much a nonpartisan solution, and that is how I will address so many of our issues having to do with the high cost of everything and affordability. Thank you.
Hey folks, I'm an infrastructure guy, so that's going to be my focus. A particular orientation is around the electrical grid. Obviously a weakness here in Nevada, lots of work to do, but I'm interested in that on a national basis. I'd like to see the electrical grid be built so that we have really, really strong national strategy. I also, just because of my background, quite clear that I'm going to be focused on finance and banking. I'm a big worker and believer in access to basic financial infrastructure and options for everyone. I think we mentioned before about my interest in postal banking, but basically, many of us are privileged in this regard. I want to make sure everybody has a seat at the table with regards to finance, and then back on the infrastructure. We've really gutted what started under the Biden administration with the Inflation Reduction Act. We went really, really far forward. We're starting to plan for a future not dependent on oil and gas. I don't mean to be anti-oil and gas, but we were on the right course. We need to get back and build a renewable infrastructure so we don't get stuck being oil and gas only and experiencing the shocks we have out there in the world. So redoubling on infrastructure. Thank you.
Right, I would like to serve on the Natural Resources Committee. I think that's essential for somebody who's a representative in Northern Nevada. I would also like to serve on the Science and Technology Committee, and if I have the opportunity to also serve on the Armed Services Committee, because I have a lifelong interest in that and have been following it for a long time. On the Natural Resources Committee, there's a lot of stuff that's going on with the Trump regime right now. I agree with Matt about using the Congressional Review Act in order to undo some of these things that have been put through. Like right now, they're trying to destroy the Forest Service. We need to do something about that. Our elected officials aren't currently doing anything about it. We need strong voices in Congress to speak up about that. They've been accelerating the mining process. So there's a South Railroad mine up in Unco where people aren't even, there's not even a draft environmental impact statement. So people there aren't being able to comment on that, which is absolutely terrible. When it comes to science and technology, what I would like to see is we need to have public hearings on AI and data centers so that people out there really understand what is going on. Because there's a lot of education that needs to take place around the issue of AI so that we can get good public policy on this. We need to slow down the data centers, put a moratorium on them so we can slow this process down so our society has a chance to catch up. And then on armed services, there's all kinds of terrible stuff happening with the military right now. They fired all of the, they fired all the people who basically, No, it's not the generals. It's the people who have oversight over whether they're violating the laws of war. And I'm sorry, I can't remember the name right now, but we need to put those people back, obviously. We need to redo things like the, I'm just going to stop this on that.
Thank you, Josh. Kathy?
I am Kathy Durham, high school civics teacher, and I am dying to be on the Education and Labor Committee, or Workforce Committee, whatever they call it now. But yeah, and education is just, it's near and dear to my heart. I spent 28 years as a public servant, you know, teaching the young kids, 26 of that in Nevada. But the reason I got in this race was to save democracy. Democracy with a little d. I get that we're a republic, but we practice democracy every day. And you cannot have a strong democracy without a good, educated citizenry. The second reason I would love to be on this is because education and workforce go together. You cannot have a strong economy unless you have an educated citizenry. And so education is the committee that I want to be on. I want to make sure that the Department of Education is fully up and functioning. I want to make sure that public money goes to public schools and not private schools and not charter schools. They don't play by the same rules. When they say school choice, they say the school gets to choose which students they get to have. It's very, very important that we have the department fully functioning, up and running, so they can provide the services to the students that we need to provide. Along the lines of things that need to be done with the Department of Ed, though, is we need to go back and look again at the appropriations, because too much of the money that is coming into our public schools through the front door goes right out the back door to corporations who sell products to schools that have no bearing on teacher efficacy, and they do nothing to improve student achievement. We need to get the too much testing out of the schools. We need to get the corporations that are taking the money that are there for students and teachers, so it stays in the school.
I'm sorry, I have to ask this. Can you repeat the question?
Happy to do it. This question about committees. If elected, what committees are you hoping you will serve on in Congress? And a follow-up to that is President Trump loves to move fast and break things, including dismantling many federal agencies. Through your committee work in Congress, tell us how you rebuild the affected federal agencies.
Okay, well, first off, I'm a big train fan. Aiden knows. There's a train museum here in Ely, and we just spent about an hour over there earlier. So I want to be on the transportation committee, and I want to be talking about trains incessantly every day.
because we need a national rail system. On top of that, I'd love to be in the small business one, because I own a small business, and we kind of get the short end of the stick on everything while getting stuck with the bill. But beyond that, the Trump administration has been gutting every department that he can, and especially the science ones and the environmental ones. Right now, he has basically decimated the Forestry Service, a service that I've worked for as an archaeologist, and his whole Doge bit gutted a lot of the departments that are under the executive. He has come through with a flaming sword and not cared who got cut and what kind of brain drain is being seen right now. So as far as rebuilding things, I think our guiding star needs to be science doesn't care about your feelings on economics, how much you own. Usually all of this comes back to some wealthy individual who can give campaign funds to somebody, or somebody who wants control over something, and not liking the answers that science is giving them on global warming, on fires in the West, on how much resources we're squandering. And I'm sorry, but these departments were set up so that we wouldn't have them, we would not be getting answers from departments like Exxon, or Halliburton. We need to have independent agencies who are able to give us answers that we can really use.
Thank you, Mark. The next question is about war crimes. The United States, Israel, and Iran are not parties to the ICC, that's the International Criminal Court in The Hague. The U.S. provides substantial military aid to Israel. Israel has invaded Lebanon and has continued to commit war crimes there, as well as targeting civilian populations in Gaza. Should the U.S. continue providing significant military assistance to Israel?
No. It should have been stopped a long time ago. Not only is Israel the one making, committing war crimes and a genocide in Palestine, but the U.S. has been abiding by it the whole time. We've been funding the entire thing. We're sending the actual bombs and the military needs and necessary for them to be able to commit these crimes. Our current administration, our current Secretary of Defense, and the folks there with Venezuela, they've committed war crimes off the coast of Venezuela when they double tapped. They're committing war crimes just by bombing schools and public utilities in Iran. When they go after the power plants, they're going after the people, and that's what is that is what a war crime is. Anytime you do something that's going to hurt the public and not be militarized, not the military infrastructure. And so we must stop sending money, and we must, if I were elected, I will not be approving any of those. I will vote no every single time there is an arms deal going towards Israel. This is another reason why I will not take AIPAC money, because I believe that our congressional members are being influenced by that money and the stocks that and from the military industrial complex for Israel. That's why they're benefiting, and they're going to continue to vote in their own best interests, and they're complicit in the genocide that is happening.
I am a huge advocate for the rules of the road in international relations. After 1945, the U.S. emerged victorious after World War II. We built so many of these institutions, United Nations, WTO, NATO, International Criminal Court. We are, as a country, 5% of world population, consume 25%, and have over 800 military bases around the world, the most of any combination of nations. This is unsustainable. We, therefore, have an interest in protecting those rules of the road if we we were a party to the International Criminal Court, George W. Bush and Trump would be at The Hague. Furthermore, beyond all of this is why, once again, my platform is the only platform that speaks to a Green Marshall Plan, which is the international equivalent of a Green New Deal or the Inflation Reduction Act. Drawing inspiration from the Marshall Plan after World War II, which set the stage for the European Union, we need to have a form of integration for the 21st century that has a significant green component, and Nevada can lead the world. We have some of the largest mines in the world, particularly around lithium, electric vehicles, and things like that. That would dramatically reduce the undue influence of the Israel lobby, perpetual war, our dependence on fossil fuel, and create millions of jobs domestically, internationally, save thousands and thousands of dollars for Americans and Nevadans, and protect the environment and so much more.
Great.
Sorry. So I want to be really clear on this. The departure of the United States from the rule of law and war fighting is, in my belief, the greatest mistake we made in the history of this country. And I'm going to say that both for moral reasons, but also for practical reasons. So once we depart, we are no longer the leader of the free world. We're not the leader of anything. We're just the biggest bully in the schoolyard. And I know why they're doing it. It's why always. They think they can get away with it. And, maybe there was a time when having 11 carrier fleets and spending as much on the military as almost all the rest of the world combined meant you could get away with it. But war is changing. We've seen it in the Ukraine. We've seen it with asymmetric warfare. This big bully, yeah, we've got Patriot missiles. They cost over $1 million each. We're shooting down drones that cost $10,000. Doesn't matter how much money we have, the rest of the world is going to bleed us dry. They're going to turn this around on us. Once we throw out the rule of law, it is the rule of the jungle. We assassinated the head of a state. World War I started with an assassination, but it wasn't a formal country assassinating another former country's head. We did that. And folks don't forget that easily. They don't forget when you bomb a school with over 150 girls because you got 10 years old maps. So asymmetric warfare is going to come back, not just morally, but economically. We're very poorly positioned, and are getting worse so. We've got to stop this and get back to the rule of law. Thank you.
Thank you, Greg. Josh?
Can you repeat the question, please?
Okay. This was about war crimes in Venezuela and Iran and in Lebanon. The United States, Israel, and Iran are not parties to the ICC in The Hague. The U.S. provides substantial military aid to Israel. Israel has invaded Lebanon, is committing war crimes there, as well as targeting civilian populations in Gaza. Should the U.S. continue providing significant military assistance to Israel?
No. The United States should no longer be providing military assistance to Israel. I don't want us to be sending more funding to Israel. Israel has engaged in genocide. It is seizing land that does not belong to it. It has pushed all of the Lebanese people up to the Litani River, out of their homes, and is flattening their villages as we speak. So we're watching them do ethnic cleansing, and it's all being done with our weapons and our money. And that absolutely has to stop. I don't want the United States to be a party to that anymore. And when it comes to war crimes, we ask how can we hold the Trump regime accountable for what they are doing? Because we know that at the end of this regime, what he's going to do is he's going to pardon everyone. So it's going to be very difficult for us to get any accountability at the federal level. Well, I have an idea. I would like to see, when we get to the point where we have Democrats in control of the Senate and the House and the White House, that we make an agreement with the ICC to ship these guys off to The Hague for accountability for the war crimes that they have committed. War crimes off the coast of Venezuela, where they've just been blowing people up without authorization, threatening genocide against Iran, aiding and abetting genocide with Israel, actively starving Cubans with the siege of Cuba, which I don't think has gotten enough coverage. This is also a crime against humanity. They need to be held accountable. And it's not only important for us, it's important for our standing in the world, that we hold these people accountable for what they have done and show the world that America is not a place that allows this to happen without accountability.
Thank you, Josh. Kathy?
First of all, no more money to Israel while they are on this march to genocide and just basically Netanyahu having his way in the Middle East for whatever reason he wants. Power, prestige, expansion of an empire. And what's difficult about this is it's the rich and powerful who wage the war, and it is the young and poor who have to go fight it. And, you know, Article 1, Section 8 says that Congress has the power to declare war. Article 1, Section 9 tells us that Congress is the one who funds it. And Congress needs to step up and do its job and remind that this is supposed to be defense and not offense. That is why we have our military. What we have done over the years of feeding this industrial war complex, and that's exactly what it is. And I don't mean to disparage America, but it is just like I don't mean to disparage Israel. It's not the people of Israel, it's the leader, it's Netanyahu. It is not the people of Palestine, it is Hamas. It is not the people of America, it is Trump and the administration that are involved in this industrial war complex for their own personal benefit, whether it's oil, whether it's money, whether it's expansion of territory, so they can put up condos, whatever it is. And then we all suffer because of it. And it needs to stop, because it's our young people that end up going and fighting this war, and it's our nation that ends up with the stain on us and our reputation. And we are less safe today because of everything that has gone on in Venezuela.
Thank you, Kathy. Mark?
No, we need to no longer be funding Israel. Frankly, I think that should have ended like a decade ago or more. They are an agitator in a region, and frankly, I'm not needing that at all. I don't get anything out of that friendship or a partner as an American citizen. But to go further, I'm 47 years old. My country has been at war in some way, shape, or form for half my life. That's disgusting. We have a system right now that allows a singular person to be able to unilaterally flex on the entire world. And as far as the war crimes go, I have never seen anything like this administration is pulling off. They are using non-painted aircraft that looks like civilian aircraft, which you are not supposed to do for obvious reasons, bombing people. And they have done other atrocities that are only going to embolden our enemies and get civilians killed. But war is nasty, and sometimes I suppose perhaps you do need to use a strong arm. But right now, I am not seeing it used with any discretion whatsoever. I don't need to be gallivanting around the world, making ourselves look bad, losing allies, and causing destruction and mayhem. I just told you a story about my own child, and I'm sure that there are people across the world who experience worse at our hands. That's not something I want as an American citizen. I would rather be using those resources here to build things for us to make our lives better.
Thank you. Thanks, Mark. And our final question today comes in part from Woody Howard here in White Pine, in Ely, Nevada. He pointed out to me that healthcare facilities here have closed, and those of you that drove here today know that we're a long way from anywhere else. You know, we're 3.5 hours to Vegas and a lot of hours to Reno or Salt Lake to get access to health care. So it's especially important for folks here in White Pine County. So the question is, access to health care and affordability of health care are significant issues in rural Nevada. Please describe what you think are the most crucial health care issues here in rural Nevada and what you would do to address that if elected to Congress.
Yeah, and thank you for the question, Woody. As most folks here know, I've been fighting for healthcare access since I moved to Nevada. And in 2017, we worked so hard and all across this district to stop the repeal of the Affordable Care Act by following our elected officials who had an impact on that. That was Mark Amadei and Dean Heller. Those were the folks that had a vote in Congress to do something to stop that repeal. And when we got into a town hall, we got them to commit to say that they were not going to. And then, of course, they turned their backs on Nevadans and did what they were told and voted to repeal the Affordable Care Act, which thankfully we won. Thank you, John McCain, for that thumbs down. I'll never forget it. Access to healthcare in the rurals is appalling, and it's because over decades and decades, they have continued to make cuts to Medicare, to Social Security, to Medicaid, and to the Affordable Care Act since it's been in place. I mean, I've talked to folks out in Elko, and they have a hospital. And y'all said White Pine just got shut down, or is on its way to being shut down, and from the funding. Now, that's a 3-hour drive I just experienced just between Elko and here. And I know the folks in Elko, I've talked to a nurse there who said she'd rather die on the way to another hospital than be treated there. So I know that hospital is not good for the people of Elko or anyone in the surrounding area. They have no access. They didn't have to go to Salt Lake City for emergency health care, but usually is a med flight. This is absurdly expensive for any American, but mostly for rural folks who have no cancer treatment as well. We need to move to a Medicare for all system. We need to lower, in the meantime, we need to lower the age to 60 to close those gaps and raise the age to 30 and make sure that we are getting rid of the caps on the billionaires who stop paying in 26 seconds into the year to Medicare and Social Security.
Thank you, Matthew. Alan?
I have friends all over the world, privileged to have them. I have a couple of friends that are Norwegian, one of which is an economist, and the other one who's a top-ranking official in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. And sometimes we talk about our societies. With regard to health care, I do believe that we are the wealthiest country in the world. I would love to draw inspiration from what the Scandinavians do with their healthcare, which is just a flat annual fee, regardless of what type of treatment you need. This is why I am a huge advocate for universal basic income and universal access to healthcare. These are absolutely fundamental. They are about investing in our communities, investing in our country, and I do not want to see any more ghost towns in this state. And that's what we're going to continue to see if we have that extractive mindset of having money be sucked up by the 1% in this country at the expense of all of us. This is why it is critical that we fight for universal access to health care for all. Thank you.
That's great.
Thanks. I think folks know that I'm for single payer and universal health care. If you're going to have a system that treats rural areas with respect, you have to set objective standards. What that means is how many doctors per population within X minutes of access. You know, that's how you did it when we went in this country and had rural electrification. You had to say what percent of people are going to be served in what time frame. Now that's all just math and numbers. Now I'm going to talk about the human dimension. It's really tough to get doctors, nurses, technicians out there. We used to have a much more robust guest worker program. In this country, there's a shortage of doctors and nurses and technicians, and especially those that are willing to work in rural areas. You're going to need to have a robust guest worker program and bring in very qualified people from outside the U.S. until we change the numbers coming out of our schools. Our schools operate as oligopolies. There's a real constraint on supply. There's quality people from around the rest of the world. Rural needs not just money and facilities, it needs people. And I'm committed to a guest worker program that will bring those folks in so we have good staff and facilities and those objective standards so that single payer and universal health care turns into a measurable program that works for the rurals in Nevada and every other rural area in the United States. Thank you.
Great. Josh?
So the first thing we can do is reverse the Medicaid cuts. Because we have up to almost a quarter of people in Nevada on Medicaid. And that makes a huge difference in the rural areas, and it's already having an impact on rural hospitals. Another thing we need to do in regards to Medicaid is we need to change the reimbursement rates for rural areas. Because it's difficult to get people to come and work out in rural areas because of the fact that the reimbursement rates are so low and then so many people out here are on Medicaid. So we need to make it financially possible for people to come out there, which gets to the problem that we have a market-based healthcare system. We treat healthcare like a commodity. So we absolutely need single-payer healthcare in order to deal with that problem. We have to stop treating this as a source of profit and start understanding that everybody needs healthcare, regardless of where they land on the economic spectrum. We should not be motivating people with the idea that, well, if you're poor enough and you're sick enough, then maybe you'll get busy making more money so you can afford healthcare. I don't like that philosophy. We need to attract more providers out into the rural areas. I think we can do that by expanding the number of people that we get into our medical programs. Like Greg said, there's a constraint on supply. We need to make it so that doctors and providers, especially mental health care providers, which I know is a huge issue out in the rural areas, to subsidize their education and perhaps forgive their debt if they spend some time serving out in the rural areas. So we can start doing something right now to try to get providers out here. And then if we have a single-payer healthcare system, then that will allow us to balance the cost overall of society so that we can afford to have a hospital in Elko, or like, you know, a serious urgent care or an emergency room here that can do the trauma work that needs to be done closer to places so that you don't have to be flying people out to Salt Lake City. I just recently heard a story of a woman up in Tahoe. She had to get flown all the way to Salt Lake City because she had meningitis in her brain. And that's just, it's insane. We can do a better system than this.
Thanks, Josh. Kathy?
Yeah, somebody who has grown up in the rurals, or lived in the rurals for the last 26 years, West Wendover has a small clinic. It's open 9 to 5, closed on the weekends, and so I understand what it's like when you don't have access to health care. And then when you go into the clinic itself, and this is nothing against the clinic, it's just the restraints that are on it because of the economy and the way our healthcare system is set up. Most of the time it's a triage center that sends you off to Salt Lake. And so I understand the biggest issue that we have in the rurals is access to healthcare. We need to find ways to open up clinics and hospitals all throughout the rural. So this is, it's not only just a health issue, it's an economic issue. In West Wendover, we have tried to diversify our economy with bigger businesses, but they won't come because we don't have a hospital. And the hospital won't open because we don't have the population base, but we can't get the population base because we don't have the economy. It's a very, very, very vicious cycle. And so we need to incentivize opening of clinics. We need to incentivize, as been mentioned before, people going into the medical industry or into the medical field. being subsidized, working in the rural communities, so that people will be attracted, will come out there and stay. Healthcare should not be a for-profit industry. The reason that costs are going up so much is because it's being monopolized by about 3 insurance companies that have vertically integrated the entire industry. They have reduced competition. We need to get rid of that and break it up. I too am for a single-payer Medicare for all system. My son just sheepishly admitted to me this week that he has 3 young children, and his wife and they canceled their health insurance through his jobs because it tripled after the subsidies went away. So we need to reverse the Medicaid tax cuts. We need to increase and make permanent the tax cut on the welfare.
Thanks, Kathy. Mark?
Well, the reason that a lot of these clinics are going away in the rural is because you are not profitable. And frankly, that's disgusting that it would come to something like that. So personally, I feel like it is a mandate of its government to take care of its people. If there is not a clinic in a region where there are people living, there needs to be one. And I don't care if it's not profitable. The government needs to put one there. You can, and I agree with Josh on this, you can also do loan forgiveness. One of the bottlenecks that we have for doctors in this country is the fact that only rich people can usually do it. And it's incredibly expensive. Those loans equal out to be one of the most expensive paths you can take in college. But if you were to tell them that if you went and served and worked in the community for 5 years, your loans would be forgiven, a lot of people would jump at the opportunity. Residencies are also another bottleneck. If we had more hospitals to be able to put people at, we'd have more doctors. So it's not just, it's a lot of money incentives that are going on. But if you were to remove the money incentive with universal health care, and by putting more clinics out, regardless of their profitability, you would see more doctors. Now, Congress is where the Americans' will is made manifest. It's not about the office of the presidency. It's not whatever the Supreme Court thinks. Congress is where we get to have our say. And universal health care is and has been an incredibly popular thing, both on the right and the left. It's just that our representatives don't seem to want to make that happen. I wonder why. We need to put people there who are going to get this done. We need to make lists of people who are going to get in the way. Thank you.
Thanks, Mark. That was our magic 4 questions, so now we can move to giving you each the opportunity to tell the voters why they should vote for you in this Democratic primary and why you're the best person to be the potential Republican nominee for this position. Thank you.
Well, I definitely hope to be the Democratic nominee. My name is Matthew Bachman, and I'm running for Congressional District 2 as a rest of us are here. I grew up in a rural horse farm in Arkansas, so it's once you grow up rural and you live rural, it never goes away. It always sticks with you. I know what that community lifestyle is like, and when the neighbors come together to help each other in crisis. I know what it's like to seek long distances for health care, and I know what it's like to seek long distances for education and for grocery shopping. I mean, it was an hour and 45-minute one-way bus ride for going to school. Is how rural I grew up in Arkansas. Now, growing up, we work hard, I have it all in me. So what we need right now is someone who's going to go to Congress, who's going to fight for the American people, who's going to fight for the working class, who's going to stand up to the billionaires and the corporations and the party leadership who continue to do absolutely nothing to rein in the power of this administration. I want to make sure that we're fighting for access to this health care that I've been fighting for the last decade. I want to fight in Congress to make sure that our public lands are kept public in the hands of the people. We need to make sure that we are lowering the costs and tackling this affordability crisis by breaking up monopolies and doing all of the things that we need to do to get things back to the basics for the people of this country. I believe we can, and I believe we need someone who's been organizing for the last decade, who knows how to have the conversations with folks all across this district and know how to win. And by organizing, by getting folks together and building coalition to get there. My name is Matthew Funkin. Go to funkinfornevada.com to learn more about me.
Thank you, Matt. Coming up?
My story is one of resilience, hope, and determination. It's the story of many of you, and it's the story of America. My grandfather was bracero brought to this country during World War II to help the war effort. My mother also worked the fields. It was in that environment that I was born. And in the 1980s, when social mobility was still a reality, they became first-time homeowners, small business owners. That resulted in me being the first to graduate from high school and attend college. After 9/11, I wanted to be a public servant, a career diplomat, advocate for American ideals around the world. Unfortunately, because of economic inequality, I dropped out, became homeless, went through the system, had to survive on SNAP, minimum wage, but like many of you, and like Rocky, I got back up, got my degrees, over 2 decades in international relations, master's in public administration from the University of Nevada, Reno. I have lived economic inequality. The data says that we need bold, progressive economic policies that respond in a very strategic way to 50 years of economic inequality. Thus, universal economic policies from cradle to grave with a universal basic income of transferring $1,300 to all, paid for by the billionaires that do not pay their fair share. This will also respond to the automation and artificial intelligence revolution that's coming down the pipe. Thank you.
Thanks, Gabby. Great.
Hey folks, I've gotten humbled a couple of times. One was when I left the corporate world and started working as a bike messenger. That is the lowest job on the totem pole. But another time I was humbled was 10 years ago, 2016. My biker buddy, Pete Castelli, he represented the union for nurses, highly educated, highly compensated, and they took a poll, and it was shocking. Union, highly educated women were going to vote more for Trump than for the other candidate. And when the 2016 results came back, there's 2,500 counties in the United States. Hillary Clinton won less than 500. 2,000 counties in 2016, rural counties predominantly, voted for Trump and the Republicans. And this trend has been continuing on. The Democratic Party has had a really tough time with its brand and what it's delivering to rural communities. Again and again, we have to face the fact that the Democratic brand and the Democratic proposition for rural Americans has not been bought. I will work under whatever label, to try to turn that around. The Democratic Party used to be the party of working people. The Republicans have taken that over. The Democrats still represent non-working or less than full employment people and the elites. It's lost its way. It needs to find its way back. 2026 is that opportunity. I will work with all the Democrats, a plurality of the independents, and will even peel some Republicans off. District 2 is going to make a real difference in this next election. Thank you.
All right, I'm Josh A. Bear. I was born in Reno to Nevada parents, and I haven't lived here very long, so it's crazy that I'm doing this, which is nothing new for me because I'm bipolar. But don't let that freak you out. I've spent my whole life learning how to be this way, and I understand it. And I'm going to argue that we need it right now, because I have been thinking outside the box my whole life, and we need people who think differently in Washington. And I have done a lot. I got a PhD in physics at age 45 at the University of Texas at Austin. I've worked training AI. I've driven real change through large institutions. For example, I was instrumental in getting the entire introductory physics, the way it was taught at UT, changed. I pioneered the use of online office hours many years before COVID at UT Austin. So innovation and doing things differently is something that I've done. And we need people who are focused on doing things differently and who have done things differently. And I am focused on fixing the system. Something that unites everybody in this country is that we all know that the system is broken. It doesn't matter who I talk to, they are all frustrated that the system is not delivering. It hasn't been delivering for a very long time. People's lives have not been materially changed. And that is what affected our reputation as Democrats. Because we are the party that promises to deliver things to people. And the fact that we have failed to deliver them is why people have lost faith in us and why they have lost faith in the government. And the biggest thing that we need to do is we need to get big money out of politics. Until we get serious about this battle, we are going to continue to struggle to get anything done. And I have a plan for how to do that. Everybody out here knows it. They've heard it many times at this point. It's built around the Ban Big Money Amendment. And I want everybody here to get behind this plan. It doesn't have to be me leading this plan. Anybody can lead the way. All of us can do it. And if we all got behind it, that would make a statement. And it would help get this moving forward because it's going to take a long time to get there. So please help out.
Thanks, Josh. Kathy?
Hi, I'm Kathy Durham. I'm a high school civics teacher. I have spent the last 28 years of my life being a public servant, raising up the students in Salt Lake and here in Nevada for the last 26 years. I teach history, government, and economics. I got in this race because the government that I teach, checks and balances, separation of power, the rule of law, is not what we see going on in Washington, D.C. And the dark chapters that I teach in my history class that we're not supposed to repeat, that we're supposed to learn from, are exactly what's been playing out in this country and all across the world. And my students pointed out to me, Miss Durham, that's not the way it's working. Miss Durham, isn't that what's happening now? I care deeply about this country. I was raised in a military family. I'm very patriotic. I have kids, I have grandkids, and my students are my kids. And I got in this race because I know that we can do better as a country. We have the right system. It's called the Constitution. We just need to have leaders who are willing to stand up when it's hard, when it's difficult, and do the right thing. I was the first person to get in this race when I started driving back and forth across this district. It's clear since July. Back and forth, meeting with the people. I know how to solve problems. I did it when I was elected to city council, and I do it every single day in the classroom when 25 different puzzle pieces come in from all different backgrounds, all different walks of life, all different skill sets, all different knowledge bases. And by the end of the class period, they all walked out on the same page, having learned more today than they knew before they walked into my class. I know how to build relationships. I know how to work with people. And I'm from the rules. I can walk the walk. I talk the talk. I'm Kathy Durham for Congress, ND.
Thanks. Mark, you're on.
So I'm tired of giving myself a speech about myself, so I'm not going to do that this time either. But former archaeologist, current small business owner, punk, all that there. I want to ask everybody something, and you show of hands. Is anybody out there a Star Trek fan? Me. Star Trek. Yes. Seriously? Okay. Yes. Me too. The other thing I like about Star Trek is that it's a hopeful future. They built something. They got together and they figured it out. And the thing that I love the most about Star Trek is that it is a world that we could have. It honestly is. But the problem is that I feel sometimes like we are mired in the now. And I look at my leaders, the leadership of the Democratic Party, and I see people who are looking at their feet. Look, this administration is going to end in 2.5 years or an extra cheeseburger from McDonald's. We're going to have to pick up the pieces. one way or the other. And we can do that while looking ahead 5 years, 40 years, 100 years. I want leadership that gives me a guiding star. What can we have? What can we build? When you have a leader that looks at their feet, you have somebody who is looking at their job. This isn't a job, it's a responsibility. That responsibility isn't just to the people right now, but the people 20 years from now. I want a goal. Mine's National Rail, but I have others too. And frankly, we can have more. We can dream bigger and we can attain those things. This may be a dark chapter, but it is going to get better. Engage.
Thanks, Mark, and thank you all so much for participating, coming all the way out here and tolerating your dyslexic moderator. Yeah, well, we're a generation. I was diagnosed my first year of law school. Great time to find out this. Anyway, that's enough about me. Thank you all, and we'll see you in Eureka. Have a great rest of your day.